We'll have interactive discussion, so please join us for a panel discussion. And I would like to invite other experts, Dr. C.R. Srinivas, Dr. Prabhakar Sangoli, and Dr. Venkatram Mysore for this panel discussion. And Dr. John McNor will be joining us online. Yeah. Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me? Dr. John McCoy is a biochemist associated with the development of this cream. So we would like to have his view on this cream, like what is this product and how it acts. Or we can start with our discussion first. In the meantime, the technical team is working on that. So, I think as Dr. Naufal very nicely presented the data about this cream and phototherapy, so I would just first introduce our experts. So you have listened to Dr. Naufal Rabubi, and Dr. C.R. Srinivas is our king of phototherapy, so we would be very eager to know his comment on this type of cream. Dr. Venkatram is also a very well-known expert and has a lot of experience in this field. And we also like to have a view from Dr. Prabhakar Sangoli also based on his experience. So first, I would like to start with Dr. Naufal. Like you presented this data, but there are like many myths or hypes surrounding this cream. So I have seen many creams coming in the market, so with a very clear-cut indications, mechanism of action, but there are many queries, myths, and surrounding this cream. So what do you think this cream is? So we can have mic on.
I think it's a novel mode of action. It'll be very interesting to see whether in practice we can actually clear the lesions that we see. And I think if it does allow 310 nanometers of light through, then just bearing in mind those limitations that I've mentioned, I think it's going to be worthwhile trying it in some patients. The main indications for narrowband UVB and phototherapy in the practice is enormous. In my own practice, for example, in South Africa, we have a very large number of patients that come in for phototherapy. So yes, there is a bit of skepticism in the beginning. It is a cream, and we wonder whether the cream is going to be able to mimic what we see with ultraviolet light in machines. I mean, these machines are carefully calibrated. They have a certain fixed amount of light that they're able to emit. We make use of these facilities, measure the light very carefully. We have to avoid sunburn and so on. So there are some challenges that we've got to overcome. But I think it's a novel type of treatment. We are always looking for new types of treatments for vitiligo. Excuse me. And I think it will suit a certain sector of the population, especially those that can't come in regularly, that can't afford the treatments that are more expensive. So I think, although I've got to say that we've got to wait and see, I'd be interested to see exactly what it does, and I hope it is going to live up to its expectations, and we'll see how it goes. I think maybe yes, someone around here might have some experience having used it already.
Yeah, so go on to doctors. Yes, anyone has?
Yes, we have one of our panel members who has used it, so we'll hear it from the horse's mouth.
Way back pre-COVID, when Pre-Symposia is available in India, I used it in few patients. The results are quite satisfactory. In fact, after it was withdrawn, there was a lot of demand. It is reasonably effective. That patented Pre-Symposia which was available, and in fact, I used it in pediatric patients also. The results are quite good. So younger age, earlier the onset of lesions, the results are quite good. I have tried it in both segmental and non-segmental.
Okay. So I'll go to Dr. Srinivas. Like, where do you place?
Yes, it is going to be very, very expensive to use this drug all over the body. Second is exposing during the afternoon. During the afternoon, if we expose during the mid-afternoon, there is going to be a lot of infrared rays. Infrared rays creates a lot of heat. So how is the person going to tolerate that heat? Even when we are giving the exposure time to sunlight for PUA, we recommend between 9 and 11 and 3 and 4. We don't ask them to show in the middle. Although ultraviolet A is maximum in the mid-afternoon, we don't ask them to expose because one, there is more ultraviolet B which may cause burn. Second, there is more amount of infrared rays which is going to cause heat. So how is a person going to tolerate that heat and expose? Because sunscreen is not going to take the heat away. They are going to still feel the heat this person is going to have. So these are some of the thought that comes to my mind with this.
Yeah. So, Dr. Venkat, sir, your view on
Yeah.
this?
See, there are two different issues. One is it is supposed to screen to it will have some. Thirdly, children who can afford to expose, particularly phototherapy machines are not very suitable for children. That is another indication. It will have some role in practice simply because we have so few options in vitiligo. So that is a different issue. But scientifically speaking, these are the challenges which are there, assuming that it really does what it's supposed to do. But the important thing to note is the publications which are there, they're all 2014 dated. The other one, which is 2021, is based on one single case. So there is a question mark on that.
So the question is, what is the percentage of narrowband UVB in the entire UVB? Entire UVB is 5%. Of that 5%, how much is narrowband UVB, and will it deliver the required dose in that given point of time? One other way to overcome this would be to use a PMA 120 meter with sensors, which is going to record the narrowband UVB continuously as a person is exposing, and you enter a joules of say 400 millijoules. When 400 millijoules is over, that meter will go beep, 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 and you will know that the patient has got the required dose. But I personally feel that it is going to take a long time to deliver that required dose using this method.
Or for rough idea, UV index can be used as because we are looking at the broader band UVB, and it is going to filter that broadband and only narrow band will come. So based on that, some calculation can be done on the what amount of radiation of narrowband UVB is getting into the skin.
Talking about positioning, I mean, assuming that it does everything that it's supposed to do and it does deliver the UV light and so on, the 311, another use for it that I can see, for example, in my practice, is to supplement the use of the machines in some patients. So, for example, we've seen a presentation earlier on targeted phototherapy. In South Africa, we do it once a week for the convenience of the patient and for the cost and so on. Although we know that phototherapy can be done 3 times a week. So if this works well, we could even ask the patients to do it twice a week and come in once for eczema. And perhaps this is another situation where one could look at combination therapies for this particular product.
Yes, Dr. Parvakar, you have experience of using this cream. So what is like, we had a meeting a few days back at Mumbai, so there were many questions, and one of the questions was, can it be combined with other therapy like topical steroid, topical tacrolimus, which we usually combine with the phototherapy? Can it be combined?
I suppose that can be done. You can combine it with any other treatment as we would do in case of vitiligo. But then these primary questions should... Now, I want to know in that placebo-controlled study, which they showed that this showed more repigmentation. What was the duration of exposure? Did they expose for the same duration to the sunlight? If they had exposed for the same duration, that patient would get the same amount of narrowband UVB, irrespective of whether he develops sunburn or not.
In the studies, they calculated using a meter. So they converted the amount of sunlight and took ambient temperatures and all those things into account to calculate a certain amount of time. So it wasn't just randomly at 5 to 10 minutes. It was a calculated measurement. So in practical terms, the patients that are going to use it, I mean, part of the issue is that we've got to save them cost. And we can't expect them now to buy UV meters to use this device. And it is a practical issue about how much of time to expose the patients. But in the clinical studies, they did use some meters.
Yes, Dr. Venkat.
No, the point is, which as I made earlier, as what Srinivas also has made, the patient will receive that amount of UVB which includes narrowband UVB. The only advantage of this cream is that it won't produce erythema because it cuts off the erythemogenic doses of the UV light, which means the patient should repigment anyway as long as the duration is right or the amount is right.
What he is telling that it is not duration based but dose based treatment. Is that what you're telling? But with PMA meter, they ensured that a person got so much meter, and in the placebo they got so much, and but if still they have to expose to the same duration.
Dosage depends on the duration.
So if they are exposed for the same duration, then both should pigment.
Yes. So,
No, this, are you able to hear me?
yes, yes, we
Oh,
can hear
excellent.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, it is not true that, so there's a non-therapeutic UVB that, and especially as the bandwidths of light head towards UVC, those bandwidths of light have no therapeutic effect but have the maximum effect of burning. So it's balancing the ratios of the therapeutic UVB to the non-therapeutic UVB. So we're delaying erythema as long as possible to transmit the maximal amount of narrowband UVB, around 311 nanometers. So it's about changing the ratio. That's what the Photocell cream is designed to do.
Yeah.
I think there is an important point there. The white skin will burn easily with UV. We don't burn.
Yes.
So this point and the cream therefore may be more relevant for a very fair skin than us.
Yes. So,
And another way to
And
get over it is
Can I
use.
also add, I also wanted to correct earlier that, so for India specifically, there are the calculations and the computer algorithms that we use to predict the amount of time and the amount for therapy, and also meters are available. But for India, we found these to be comparable to just the standard amount of time. So, the 10 to 20 minutes or whatever the clinical trial definition was. The UV is in India is very strong, and it doesn't have the same, changing effects that like you would get in, northern, like a place like the UK or something like that.
okay. So, we move on to Dr. Pravakar, we were discussing about the combination treatment.
Yeah, definitely it's a adjuvant treatment. It's not be a monotherapy, and limited acrofacial vitiligo, and we have to combine it with oral antioxidants, vitamin D, and so it's an adjuvant therapy. It won't be a mainstay in the therapy.
Yes.
And limited, because of cost factor, limited like acrofacial vitiligo, it will be useful because of cost factor also.
Yes. We can have questions from the audience. Comments, questions. Yes, Dr. John. So, regarding, as you mentioned, it filters out the bad part like UVC or broadband UVB, and only the narrowband is delivered. But to my mind, so it's a cream, so it can't be more effective than the sun. So we are protecting from the sun with delivering right dose or maybe the good narrowband UVB. But as Dr. Srinivas mentioned, so it's difficult to believe like a placebo, because sun is giving all these things, UVB or narrowband UVB. So this cream would help.
No, that's not correct. The sun is giving broadband UVB, which includes non-therapeutic UVB below 311 nanometers. And if you look at the erythema chart, you'll see that as we go lower in wavelength in the UVB range, those wavelengths of light create the most erythema, so the most damage with the least amount of therapy. And the optimal wavelength for balancing the amount of burning to the amount of therapy is 311. So by attenuating the UVB radiation towards 311, we're producing, that's how the cream is beneficial and was demonstrated as such in a pilot study. It's you can do a similar comparison. There are broadband UVB phototherapies, but narrowband UVB is found to be superior for the exact same reason, because the amount of therapeutic radiation versus damaging rays is optimal at 311 nanometers.
So that is an important. So otherwise, if we just think it as a simple sun filter cream, just it filters out the other radiation except narrowband UVB, so that makes it.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a sunscreen with a hole in it.
Yeah.
So it has a hole in the absorption spectrum of the sunscreen that allows, attenuates the natural UVB radiation towards that 311 nanometers. That's therapeutic for vitiligo psoriasis.
Okay. So any concern regarding absorption? So because sometimes it's to be applied over the whole body. So any concern regarding absorption and
Of the actives in the cream?
yeah.
No, these are very safe, as safe as a sunscreen.
So it's like a physical sunscreen. I mean that.
Yeah, they're not absorbed into the body. They remain on the skin, and physical sunscreen.
Okay. Yeah. So yes, Dr. Naufal, and looking at this now, so what are your view in your practice? So where are you going to place this cream if it's available to you?
I think somebody wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
Dr. Sangoli, one question. Will you like to use it along with mini pulse in a spreading vitiligo?
No. I have used oral antioxidants and vitamin D. I have not used oral mini pulse. Definitely it can be used. See, basically it's a substitute for narrowband UVB
Because
phototherapy
all these
for
lectures say-
limited facial or acrofacial who cannot visit whole body units. That's a simple.
What we need is Indian studies, not just 1 or 2 case reports, where this is used as a monotherapy and to find out how effective it is. Then only the question of combination. If as a monotherapy, it doesn't deliver the goods, then it is the other drug which is delivering the goods. So first we should prove its effectiveness by doing a monotherapy in the Indian condition. And for that, we can use that PMA meter to see that the exact dose is delivered.
I want to raise a question here. We had topical Povasol that we were using. Melanosil ointment, lotion, oxorolin lotion, all those things. That was also a form of responding to sunlight in presence of a chemical. Now here, it does a similar thing, but through narrowband UVB. There, no chemical. Now there, the exposure was very limited. They would get blistering very, very easily. The problem was the reverse. It will really blister very quickly. Here, our vitiligo patients don't burn that much even on exposure to sunlight. How often do they come to us saying that I have burnt? So it is not just the melanin, there is some other mechanisms operative also. That being the case, its screening of other light may be very, very relevant to the skin which burns easily, so that they will tolerate more of sunlight. I'm not sure how much it does for the Indian skin.
In addition, UVB will cause hyperkeratosis of the skin. You will find that in many cases of vitiligo, you'll find that the skin is leathery. It causes thickening of the skin that further increases the amount of light that is required for repigmentation. Now, we don't know how much of that will be prevented. Probably by use of this, that hyperkeratotic element which occurs with the broadband UVB will be prevented if we use it. Because with narrowband, we don't find that. Whereas with broadband, we used to find the hyperkeratosis.
Yes, this is important point. So here we have an advantage. Like probably it is protecting against that and then can give rise to the better repigmentation when we are exposing to sun, so that could be a hampering in this way. Yes.
Can we
Yes,
increase
Doc.
the frequency to prevent that hyperkeratosis? Like instead of thrice weekly, can we make it four times weekly? like in European protocol in POA therapy?
No, I think the simplest way to prevent hyperkeratosis is to use a sunscreen. So now we are using a sunscreen where you are cutting off the UVB of the other range. It is the other UVB that is causing the hyperkeratosis. So this will have that advantage of preventing that hyperkeratosis. That will be an added advantage of this cream over the other. If you use any sunscreen, you are going to prevent the hyperkeratosis. But that won't allow the NB-UVB to pass through. This allows the NB-UVB to pass through.
So I think it's a safe option where one can offer a patient can't come for phototherapy. So if patient can expose to the sun, so under those conditions, so it could be one of the safe therapy option. Is any other concluding remarks as we move on to our inaugural session shortly?
I think the skin phototype, in South Africa we have all 6 phototypes, ranging from type 1 to type 6. And we have a very high incidence of basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell, and even melanomas. And I think, although in the studies they had type 1 to type 3, I think we just need to be mindful about the possibility of prolonged sun exposure in the very, very light skins, particularly type 1 and type 2. But otherwise, we can see it positioned for those that you just mentioned now.
Yes, Dr. Siri.
And we are also curious to know as to whether it really filters off the narrow band, means other rays, and allows the narrow band. So have some studies been conducted wherein this has been applied as a film on something which allows the UVB to pass through, and with a sensor beneath that, did they measure to find out whether narrow band UVB alone reaches or not through. It need not be the human skin. It can be a quartz which will allow all the light to pass through, and beneath, on the quartz you can apply this sunscreen in the required amount, and with the sensor below, we can measure the amount of light to see whether really the amount reaches the skin or not.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Venkat, any
But
concluding
this will have a place. Definitely there is some...
That has been done. During the development of the product, that's exactly how we did it. It's a little more, slightly modified from what you said, but yes, that's the basic principle.
This will have a place in practice because there is some logic. Efficacy we will determine with experience. And secondly, of course, it will be prescribed simply because there are so few options in vitiligo. Anything new is welcome. Any new thing is welcome. For some time, we will try it. We tried phenylalanine. We tried pseudocatalase. So, one more thing.
One last question. The places where they don't get sunlight, then what you do? Will you use this or will you not use it?
Yeah.
No sunlight. Your patient is from UK.
No. Through the clouds, ultraviolet A passes. Even some amount of UVB will pass. The broadband UVB will pass through the sunlight. Cloud does not cut off completely. There are different type of clouds which cuts to different extent. So if there is some amount of light cloud, you can still ask a person to go undergo Symposium. And I don't know how much amount of narrow band is going to pass. Whether the broader band of the narrow band, that is closer to UVA, that is 311, will pass through the clouds or not, again that has to be studied.
Okay, I thanks Dr. John McCoy for joining, and I thanks my panelists for this panel discussion. Thank you very much.